We're going to be talking about online tools for marketing and organizing your club, mostly focusing on the WordPress for Toastmasters stuff. And this is my commercial. What we're trying to do is create a site that is easy to find on search, that's dynamic, that gives you room to spread out. So it's not just a page, but you can have a whole blog. You can feature people who've won contests. And then you have also the more functional aspect where you're inviting people in to sign up for roles and sign up to speak. And we'll be going into some detail on some of that as we go along. So here's how we got here. I joined Club Awesome Toastmasters in Coral Springs, Florida back in 2010. A year later, they asked me to be VP of Education, and I, of course, said, who, me? I don't have anything figured out yet. What are you making me VP of Education for? Relatively soon after that, I got frustrated with the Fritos host platform, which is the default that Toastmasters International provides for clubs to set up their website. I wanted to be able to highlight my open house meeting. I wanted to be able to promote all sorts of things, and I felt it was just too confining. I had some experience with WordPress, and so our first WordPress version of Club Awesome came along in 2012. And originally it was just a one-off hack for my club. I stuck in here something about, I had a book that came out in 2013, which is only relevant because it got me running around and giving more speeches. I got to keynote at some conferences. And I was talking about techniques for effective marketing, effective collaboration using social tools. And at some point, it kind of got out that we had this software that was unique in the universe. And so one of my club officers was bragging about it to people at a district conference, and they said, well, how can we get access to this? And so I had to go back and retrofit it, and I had to take out all the places where Club Awesome was, hard-coded into the names of everything and try and make it more general. So by 2014, we had a plugin up on WordPress.org, and I launched the WP4Toastmasters.com site, which is sort of the documentation and propaganda site about how wonderful it is and how to use it. At the end of 2015, I spun off the part of the site that was hosting clubs for other people, and I called that Toastmos.org. And I have a club that I help charter online presenters that started on Toastmos.org, and in software they call it eating your own dog food, where you're trying to foist something on other people. You should sort of experience it more like they experience it. So that's kind of the story there. That's a place where people can set up a free site. As of now, we have 54 sites live on Toastmos.org and an unknown number of other sites where people have downloaded the software and set it up on another WordPress site. And part of the point of using WordPress is that this is actually the world's most popular web publishing platform. And it's used by small bloggers, but it's also used by big publications, big corporations. And it's natural for any kind of news or magazine site because the blogging mechanism is a way of publishing articles. And, big corporations will use it often for, say, their investor relations site. So if you go to the Walt Disney site where you buy tickets to go to the parks, that's going to be a completely custom site, but their corporate information site is on WordPress because that's something that they can take and customize just like I can take it and customize. And Enhancements that I'm responsible for are RSVP Maker, which is a general mechanism for scheduling events and also registering people to attend events. You can have PayPal and Stripe payments attached to those if it's something that you're charging for. And then a set of extensions on top of that that allow you to set up a meeting agenda and have people sign up for roles. There's also a WordPress theme that gives it the look and the branding of Toastmasters, makes it relatively easy for you to add that, and that's active by default on all the Toastmasters.org sites. So you can change the banner, you can change the background colors, a number of things, but this I did go through the trouble of getting it approved by the Toastmasters brand police. So one trade-off if you set up an independent site and you do your own custom design is they may come to you and say this wasn't approved and it's out of conformance with our brand guidelines. So I've sort of taken some of those headaches out of the way. I have also done some work on trying to make sure that these pages will reformat for a mobile device if somebody's viewing your site on their smartphone. And I mentioned there's these couple of other sites, the documentation site and the site where you can sign up for a free site. One trade-off with Toastmasters.org is, as opposed to setting up your own independent website, is that you get a subdomain site. So online presenters is op.toastmasters.org. Your site, your club might be myclub.toastmasters.org. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you get people to that site. It doesn't necessarily matter that much whether you have your own domain, but as a branding thing, it's a little bit nicer if you can have your own independent domain. And I don't support that on Toastmasters.org at the moment. Technically, it's actually somewhat difficult to do and maintain the security and the other characteristics that I want to have. Because these are free sites, I am looking for sponsors. So here's another little commercial, is I am looking for people who will make donations, clubs who can donate a little bit of money, people who may have small businesses. And the first couple of sponsors were actually friends of mine from online presenters. So at some point I need to grow beyond just having people that I know personally signing up to sponsor. I'm looking for other sponsors to help me out. Not necessarily with a huge investment, but with a few $100s, we can keep things going. And I did have something a couple of months ago where the site was experiencing all sorts of performance problems, and so I wound up upgrading to the next tier of web hosting, committing to another $50 a month or $600 a year. So I've got to make up that money sometime. And there's a page on the WordPress for Toastmasters site that spells out how you can pay for a small sidebar ad or a larger feature ad. Part of the point is not necessarily just that you create content for your website. You want to have a rich website and give a lot of depth there about what makes your club so special. And you can do that with things like blog posts celebrating somebody who's won an award or won a contest. See, somebody's joined who's not muted. So if you can find the mute button in the lower left-hand corner and mute your microphone, that would be helpful. Or I'll deal with it in a moment. So what we can do is we can create this blog post and then we can cross-promote that on Facebook. And so I add my little snippet of text about why this is so special. I paste in the link to Facebook and we get the preview of that site on Facebook with the featured image from the page. And then in the comments, I go back and I add something saying, gee, it would be great if you joined us at our next meeting. And here's the website where you can find out all the details about where and when we meet. So anything you can do to sort of optimize that experience, you're trying to build a breadcrumb trail back from this great social media activity that you want to have on behalf of your club to your club website where you give all the details. I also think that one of the strengths of WordPress, and I can show you this later, is that it makes it relatively easy to add video, images, all sorts of media. One trick I've gotten to get members of my home club comfortable with being videoed on a regular basis is we publish the video on YouTube in this unlisted status. So that means that they're not going to become YouTube stars unless they want to be, but we can share that with them after the meeting so they can go back and look at their own speech and see the body language issues, hear the ums and the ahs, whatever, so that they can improve. So the educational mission is very important. And then if somebody really knocks it out of the park, then we can encourage them to allow us to make it public and share it more broadly. And I share this just as an example of how you can take your smartphone and the YouTube app on your smartphone, and you can pretty quickly upload some videos. So this is actually what we've been doing from my home club. Is I have an old smartphone that I never sent back to Sprint. And so I've donated that to the club to be our camera. At the end of the meeting, we mount it on a tripod for stability, and I can show you a picture of that later, but there are these inexpensive clips you can get that will allow you to mount a smartphone to a tripod. We record these things, we can upload several of them, and then I can go back in through the web user interface and add the details about who the speakers are and so forth. And again, I can demo some of that later if you'd like to see it. We have a whole process that we use to send out every week's speeches to the membership on a regular basis. So we're going to move ahead to what's supposed to be the kind of the core of this meeting. I have a panel of folks here with us who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves for just a moment. These are folks, I guess they're all recruited from running sites or being involved in sites on the Toastmasters.org platform. I wanted somebody besides me to maybe give a little bit of a testimonial, but it doesn't have to be all praise either. You can beat up on me. You can tell me what needs to be improved or maybe what just needs to be tweaked a little bit. So with that, I'm going to get out of this screen sharing mode. And it looks like our group has grown a little bit, but we're still not taking over the world here. So we're going to make it useful for the people who've tuned in, and the replay will be available later for those who haven't tuned in live. So I'm going to start with Trisha. If you want to unmute, just introduce yourself and kind of put it in context of where you are with using this platform, how you got introduced to it.
Yes, thank you, David. My name is Trisha G. I am near Pennsylvania, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, here in the United States, and I've been a Toastmaster for just over 2 years now. I was first introduced to WordPress actually from online presenters, but I have 3 different online clubs that I participate with that all use WordPress, so I'm a very old hat at it. I use it quite often. I'm a vice president of membership at one of the 3 clubs, and I use it to add our new members to the club so they can receive our weekly agendas and sign up for roles. I find it very useful, especially my favorite feature is the evaluations, that not only can you fill them out PDF like automatically, just they're fillable, and then as soon as you're done, it emails the evaluation form to the person who gave the speech. So that's my favorite function of the WordPress.
Okay, cool. And what's something that needs to be improved?
I think for members that do leave the club for whatever reason, it seems a little clunky to remove them from the membership list, so they stop receiving. At least I'm having that issue where it's still sending them emails, even though I've actually had to go in and like, falsify their email addresses so it stops doing it.
Okay. There should be something there that says remove, but well, maybe we'll look at that in a moment to see if we can answer that question. Roger, you did make it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, I'll introduce you last because you're the most important. No, or just because other people were here first, and so we should introduce them first. Julie, give us a little bit of context. We chatted with some other folks earlier, but I think that was before the recording started. Okay, let's see. I got to unmute you.
Oh.
There you go.
Hey, everyone. I'm Julie. I'm the president of Grub and Grab Toastmasters, a club out here in Irvine, California. We're a physical club that meets at lunch. So one of my things is members get so many emails. They're just bombarded. But with the site, I'm able to make it one streamlined communication. So what I try to do is we aim to do a preview of the meeting with a reminder of the upcoming roles. And then we also aim to do a recap with a look ahead of the next week to remind people, because no matter how many times I tell them, they still forget what their roles were. No matter how many emails they've got, everybody says, oh, I don't want to look at the site. But somehow when it magically shows up, the other thing that I also like is I take the agenda and I'll send that out as well, just like another touch point about what their roles are to make sure that they remember and they either tell me they're not coming or they actually show up and have a speech ready.
Okay, that would be the better outcome, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Cool. And Laurie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laurie Whitmore. I have been a Toastmaster. Next month will be 23 years. And in that time, I have served as club president for 5 different clubs and have helped many clubs computerize their whole agenda by going with software. I got introduced to the WordPress software at Advanced Toastmasters Online, and I've not really taken on the administrator function with Toastmost. Okay. So I'm much more familiar with Easy Speak, which is what I started with.
Right.
And I've been an expert in that and have brought that to several clubs. And then on the last few years, I learned Fritos Host because so many other clubs already use that. So I now roll that out to new clubs that I'm involved in chartering, because often some of the members are already familiar with Fritos Host from another club. So it just has been easier than learning a new software application.
Okay.
And I find that each of them has advantages and disadvantages, although I work in IT, and the way Oracle and SQL Server leapfrog each other on features, I see Fritos Host rolling out features that I liked in Easy Speak that it didn't have, and I'm not as familiar with Toastmost over the years to know if you've been doing that as well.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and I'll tell you, Easy Speak seems to have a lot of loyal fans. I did not know that Easy Speak existed when I started down this path. But I will say that there's 2 things. Easy Speak seems to be good as an administrative system. I don't see it as being that great as a marketing system. And the other thing that I sometimes argue is that if you go to the trouble of learning WordPress, particularly the actual publishing and marketing aspects of WordPress, you're at least learning a skill that you might be able to apply in business someplace. So it's a little bit more of a professional skill that you're learning. You can get experience with doing some digital marketing things, doing cross-marketing between the website and social media. And so I think those are some of the advantages that WordPress has. And also you just have this worldwide community of people who are improving on it. And so I get to sort of surf along top of that. And I've just added my little thin layer of extra software that's more Toastmasters specific. Roger, thanks for joining.
No problem. This is Roger. I am in the same club in online presenters along with David, and that we are a completely online club. So we have to manage everything online. Before I finish, I would love not to steal this meeting away, but I easily can do that all the time. But Laurie, I'd love to hear from her, not exactly now, but when it's appropriate, to hear from her and maybe others in this panel has similar experience in terms of what are the one or two things that really stood out in those other platforms, good or bad, not the detail in terms of point by point and how they stack up, but just really, hey, if I'm thinking of Easy Speak, what's that one thing? Oh, I love Easy Speak because of A, or I hate Easy Speak because of B. I would love to hear some of that and what everybody's experience are. To give a broad oversight in terms of summary of my experience with Toastmasters is that if someone who has experience with WordPress, it's a lot easier because it's, hey, I've worked basically with WordPress. I know how to post something, even if I don't know where it is. Hey, it's on my left side, and here is my category. I can find it either it is within a theme or outside of a theme or in WordPress, the mother engine, whatever. So most of the time when I dived in, I'll give you a quick example. When I go to IKEA and I come home, I don't look at the instruction. I just start putting things together until I get stuck. And then my wife says, see, you should have read that instruction. And David knows, is that I just take that Toastmasters and I say, hey, let's do this. I just go into until I get stuck. Then David's my wife here now. Online presenters and say, hey, David, I got stuck. What's going on? So he comes and says, okay, yeah, you can do this, or maybe the features over there. Right. Here's the two sides of the coin. I think David, and this is more specifically talking about David, he built so much into that theme. Is that one, you can get overwhelmed because everything and the kitchen sink is in there. You can do, you find out things that, oh, I could do that too. But on the other hand, everything and the kitchen sink is in there too. So you don't really have to say, oh, I got to buy this other plugin, or I need to learn how to do that. And I would say almost everything that I've encountered that I wish we can do, if I spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes looking through it, I can do it one way or the other within that plugin. So yeah, and I think because being in a WordPress platform, when it comes to things like marketing, when it comes to SEO, when it comes to, hey, writing a blog and had it be picked up from Google, I'm not an expert in this area, but I think relatively speaking, it is a little bit easier than the other two platforms that's been mentioned.
Right.
That's my overview.
And I wanted you here, Roger, because you are the person who pushes me on a regular basis. And everybody else is
you know what? I do things I'm not supposed to. That's what he really
no, but also, he was talking about being able to figure out how to do things. There's also, on a fairly regular basis, he says, well, it doesn't do this, but maybe it should. And usually within a few weeks, I can figure out how to do something. But, there is a trade-off, too, that I am so far a one-man show. This is published as open source software. So in theory, some other very talented web programmer could come along at some point and add to the software, improve the software. but you know, I've had that happen like once, where somebody wanted to tweak something on the agenda printout formatting, and he gave me that one piece of code, and never again. So for the time being, I am kind of a one-man show. So that's a trade-off. So I was going to spend some time doing demo, and you know, hopefully that'll be useful for the people who aren't as familiar, or even Laurie, who says she hasn't necessarily used it that much from the administrative standpoint. But you know, if there are things that people want to tell me up front in terms of what you want to make sure that I show you, you know, what something that you've gotten confused about, or that I should specifically should show you, why don't you tell me now?
Well, I had a few things that I wanted to mention that are kind of in response to what Roger was saying. I just quickly jotted down what I thought were some advantages of Easy Speak and Fritos Toast. And I have no idea if you can do this in Toastmost or not, but if you can show all of us or tell me later privately.
Okay.
So one of the things I really like about Easy Speak is that it has this concept of confirming your role, because sometimes VPs of Ed will assign roles and people don't even know they have the role. Or you don't know, does this person know they're committed to this or not? So there is a concept of a confirmation, and once you've confirmed your role, then when emails go out, sending out the agenda, there are 5 different ways of sending an email that you can choose from. You don't have to spam the whole club to get all those emails every time. If you've confirmed your role or you've confirmed your attendance, you don't get an email about tell me if you're coming or not. And also it had a nice built-in thing for tracking your progress in manuals. So at one time, before Pathways, it was very helpful for filling in. You filled a role and you got CL credit, and it would keep track of all that CL stuff for you. It's not so relevant anymore. In Fritos Toast, they recently added a concept of confirming a role, but still when you send email, it always sends it to everyone whether you've confirmed it or not. But they added some new features this year with next to where you assign a speaker, there's a little button to print the introduction or open the evaluation. And now when you print the agenda, there's also a new button to print all speech introductions. So for the Toastmaster to have all the speech introductions on 1 or 2 sheets of paper in preparation for a meeting.
Right.
I don't know how to do that at all in Toastmost.
Okay.
They also both have some built-in reports where as a VP of Ed or president of a club, I want to look at, you know, how I want to look at attendance over time, or I want to look at who hasn't been a Toastmaster in the last 3 months. Easy Speak had a button where you could have it automatically assign roles for your open agenda according to who hasn't done it the longest. So, and then you could still adjust it afterwards, but I felt like it did kind of 2/3 to 3/4 of the job for a VP of Ed. And then you can also run reports to give you that information, and those reports are built-in role reports in Fritos Toast and Easy Speak. So I don't know how to do any of that in Toastmost.
Okay. All right. That's a pretty good list. And I also got a couple came through the chat of things to talk about here. So Roger, yes.
Yes, I want to respond very quickly to Laurie. Thank you very much for that quick summary. And I want to brag a little bit about David's theme right here in WordPress is that I have been a pathway guy and been running around both in the Dallas area and also internationally. I don't have no idea how my name's got out there, got pulled into all sorts of webinar from around the world. But the one thing that a lot of people get into Pathway that intuitively thought that they could do in Basecamp is actually available in Online Presenter or the Toastmasters thing. Specifically, one big issue is the evaluation. Most people get into Pathway and say, hey, it's going to be digital. It's going to be online. I can literally sit there with my laptop, with my iPad, and I can give my evaluation at the meeting, whether it is an online meeting or brick and mortar meeting. As long as I have Wi-Fi, I could do that. Well, Basecamp doesn't really do that, and it's not built that way. But lo and behold, in his thing is that, hey, if I'm a speaker and I pick that this is going to be a traditional model, this manual, this project, or I'm in Pathway, this path, this project, guess what? Any members can go to the evaluation page, click on it, and it will list out Roger is speaking on this project and the whole form. And I'm pretty sure that David's basically just typed up everything from the little form onto the website page. WordPress theme is every one of them are available. And if, let's say, you have a last-minute speaker that his or her name is not on there, well, there's a generic forms that you can jump in, or there's a place that you can say, oh, this was really for Laurie, and she's really not speaking on Pathway, she's really speaking on traditional. Boom, 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 here it is, all page, I can type it all up. I don't have to worry about type it into PDF, save it, pull it out, oh, let me find the email address for that speaker and send it. And it has that record so that if I've given 200 evaluations to somebody, everything's in that database. One shot, I can have it all look right in front of me. So that feature is what, I'll say this on record, that Toastmasters International should have had that in building the whole thing, but I have no clue what Basecamp, because it's a third-party software, so I'll leave that alone. So just a kudos to what David had put together in that regard.
All right, thanks. It's funny, that feature isn't used by all clubs necessarily, and some of it does depend on getting people to actually, if you can get people to log into the site and actually put in their speech details, the specific
garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right.
No matter what platform you put in, whatever you put in, you get what you get out of it.
Right. I mean, and the online clubs people are a little bit more digital to begin with, so that helps.
But you have to navigate to it. It's not right there on the agenda, correct? It's not something you just click on from the agenda to open up that evaluation. You have to go through.
Maybe it could be, I guess, but again, that might be something that I take under advisement to add. I mean, there's sort of a principal view of the agenda, and then there's the more interactive view of the agenda. So for the interactive view, it might make sense to have that as a direct link. Well, let me go ahead and show a few things, and then we can always come back here and chat some more. Let's see. All right, so this is the main Toastmasters page. This invites people to come in. If they don't already have an account, they can create one. And once they create one, they can basically fill out a form to create one of these sites. And again, it's going to be something like myclub.toastmasters.org. I could go through that process in a minute, maybe, but just to
David,
fast forward.
David,
yes, sir.
Quick question. You still have this for free for the clubs, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, I am looking for sponsors to help underwrite the whole thing, but yes, it is free. So this is an example of a club website. Again, it's op@toastmasters.org, and here's sort of our promotional material. We list some of the better workshops that we did out on the home page as a way of letting people see that we had a world champion in public speaking come to visit with us, things like that. And so there's sort of a boilerplate for all these sites. that you can start with, but then you should be adding the personality of your own site, the things that are specific to your own site. And because we have a lot of video replays available, you know, every week's meeting is available as a replay. And then we may call out certain things, you know, a particular speech to feature. If I want to see all my speeches, so this is going back to 2012, shortly after I got the software working, I can see a pretty complete list of all my speeches. They are also broken down by manual or path. So this is the My Progress tab. And if you're an administrator, you can go in and see this information for other people as well. If I wanted to see just the Pathways projects, so here are Pathways projects for people in the network, including May. And let's see, we had a bunch of these speeches, a bunch of these things that were set up. So there was a whole competent communication progress report that is supposed to give you kind of a quick overview of how far people were in that manual. And we have some similar things for the other projects. This is a demo site that I set up. So I'm going to do most of my experiments over here so that I won't be screwing up any of the live websites. But the idea is I can come in and with a click, I can sign up for a role. And we've actually restricted this function on online presenters of being able to edit. So if you're the Toastmaster of the day, you can edit. And if you're one of the officers, you can edit the signups. But otherwise, you can only sign up for yourself. So we've decided to buckle that down a little bit more. And in this editing mode, I can go through and I can assign somebody else to these roles. And these are mostly either dead presidents or Doctor Who characters here. If I want to assign a guest in the editing mode, I can say, and actually that's something that came up recently. I'm giving a guest speech at another club, and they actually had to create a user count for me on Fritos host in order to assign me as a speaker and have me show up on the agenda. So here we do have a way of registering those guests. And sometimes it might be somebody who we just haven't gotten them 100% into the system, but they've been coming regularly to the meeting and they agreed to serve a role. So until we get them a Toastmasters ID and get them fully set up on the site. As an individual, I can also come through and take myself off the agenda. Now, actually, most of the clubs that I work with do operate more on a mode of having people volunteer for roles as opposed to assigning them. And I think we've heard that some other people do more of the assignment method. If you do assignments, we have a way of randomly assigning people who don't have a role to fill these slots. So if I did it this way, and I went down to the bottom of the page and I clicked submit, all the people who are shown here would be assigned to these roles. So there's an assignment mode, but there's also a suggestion mode, and this is more like the Easy Speak feature that was mentioned earlier. So in the suggested mode, I can add, the person will get a notification saying that David Carr has recommended that they take on this role, and they have to click to confirm before they actually get added to the agenda. And I think it's a little bit different than maybe the way EasySpeak has it implemented, but that role is not locked into that person until they confirm. So somebody else potentially could come into the site and sign up first, because you may have people who ignore their email. I think you probably all deal with a few people who ignore most of their email. And so if they're not paying attention and they don't jump on it, they don't necessarily get the role. So those modes are available. Now, these are also things that you can turn on or off depending on whether you think they're desirable. And so there are all sorts of things on these settings screens. So here I'm looking at the back end of the site. I didn't really explain that before because I was looking at reports, but you have the front end of the site, which is publicly visible, and then you have the back end. It's only visible to somebody who's logged in. And the number of menu items that shows up on the left here is also different. For a regular user, it would be a more abbreviated list as opposed to the site administrator. And of course, only a site administrator can get to these basic settings. So there are some things here like setting the time zone. You can also designate other people to be administrators. So it might be good to have a backup administrator, at least one other person. You might decide that you want to have somebody be named a manager. And manager is sort of a tier below administrator. They can edit user records and they can edit the website, but they don't have the full administrator rights. And there are other roles that you can use as well, such as editor or author, which is basically people who can edit all the content of the site, or who, an author can create blog posts and publish them. There's a contributor who can create a blog post but can't publish it until somebody else approves it. You can decide what access you want to grant that is Toastmasters specific. So deciding whether people should be able to access the email list. Should everybody be able to do that, or you only want the officers to be able to do that? So these are security roles that are available. And then something that we just added recently was this feature where I can limit access to the signups function. So this is, the administrator can do everything, should be able to do everything, but I can decide whether only a manager is allowed to edit the signups. And also we can have meeting specific roles. So if you're Toastmaster of the day for that meeting, then you can edit, because you may get people responding to you via email or some other means telling you that they want to be added to the agenda. And so you can do that on their behalf. And this point system is a concept where you can keep track of how often people give speeches versus serving in other roles. And I think this might be particularly important for clubs. I mentioned that my clubs tend to operate more on volunteer, people volunteering for roles, volunteering to speak. Well, people are monopolizing the speaking roles to too great of an extent. You might want to be able to track that. You might even want to be able to deny them, not allow them to sign up to speak until they've served in a few other supporting roles to help out the club. So we discussed that at Online Presenters. For now, we're just using it for reporting purposes. So there's a reports dashboard, and under that dashboard, one of the reports is the speaker points system. And we can see that James Buchanan has been hogging the speaking roles a little bit too much. He has a negative point balance. And so if we're using this from a reporting perspective, this would be something for the VP of Education to have a talk with him and say, we'd like you to fill a few more other supporting roles, give an evaluation, service timer, before the next time you give a speech. So some of these things are based on how your club wants to operate. And there's a blog post on WordPress for Toastmasters that explains some of how that works. So, I mean, as Roger mentioned, there is potentially maybe a little bit too much in here in terms of all the features and menus that are available. If I were to look under online presenters under evaluations, this is what a couple of people have mentioned. So if I want to give John Quick an evaluation, so this is an equivalent of what's on the PDF. But, you know, I'm not, again, this really was created for use by the online club, but it doesn't have to be. But the idea was that emailing PDFs back and forth is kind of a clunky way of dealing with the evaluations. Here we can just present the exact same information and allow people to fill out a form, check off the options. So you could you did a great job with your topic, and here's an extra note. And when I click Save Changes there, that gets emailed off to John Quick. And I don't know if I've gotten too many. Yeah, if somebody sends me an evaluation this way, I can see it here. So Lou Brown used the form to evaluate my speech on why I obsess over video, and you should too. And these are some of his comments. So that's something that is preserved for my future use. Let's see. And one other thing I wanted to show, you're probably familiar in Club Central, you can go in and you can download a spreadsheet. Oh, well, it's not going to do it now because apparently I'm logged out, but you can download a spreadsheet, and I have a phony one here. So the spreadsheet view of the membership roster has everybody's name and email in it. And what I can do is I can highlight this whole thing and copy it. And I import these people into my demo site, and I'm going to create accounts for them. So where I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to users and add members. And I can add members one at a time. But as I say, I want to add this whole spreadsheet. So I'm just going to paste that information in here. And check for missing members would check to see if there's anybody who's no longer on the membership list whose account maybe should be dropped. I'm not going to do that here, but just for demo purposes, this comes back and asks me to confirm that this information is correct, so that if there was a typo or something, I could fix it along the way. And so these people are all going to get an email saying you've been registered at toastmasters.org. Your username will be demo member, and it gives some more details about how they can log in and set their passwords. All right. So let me pause and take a breath. Stop sharing for a moment. Was what I showed you there useful? Again, I have one other thing that I wanted to show that I dug up, and so let's say, so okay, Sunny is asking a question about, I think, about templates that I was supposed to get back to. Yeah, I think that is probably one of the most important things that I should show. So let me go back there before I get distracted.
And David, while you're going there, what it is myself and another previous member developed a template that's perfect for us. I have it on my screen, and I just don't know the next step to adjusting it to the future meetings that are already printed up, because this is the one that we really want to use. The basis of it is perfect. And I know it's a few steps, but I've spent like 2 hours trying to figure it out on my own when I know it's not that hard.
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm often telling people that this is simple and easy, and then I have to slap myself and realize that it's, I know how it's supposed to work because I set it up. That doesn't necessarily mean it's simple for everybody. So let's see a couple of things here.
I mean, I have mine up. It's like if you took a look at it, you probably could say, this is what you need to do. And in 30 seconds, I could save myself a whole lot of trouble, and it would really add value to our club. Okay.
So let me just take it a step at a time before we do that, though. Let me show the basics. So one of the things on this black bar across the top are sort of administrator items or options that show up when you're logged in. And if I want to edit just this one, this single meeting, maybe I just want to vary the number of speakers or vary the format a little bit for this one single meeting, I would just click Edit RSVP Event here. But we also have this notion of templates. So the template is sort of where you define your boilerplate meeting. And that is something where once you update it, you can regenerate all the events that are based on that template. So we try and show these related documents up here under event options. I can go to edit template. That's not the way it's supposed to be showing up. And if you ever see this, by the way, where it's showing code, there are two view modes. There's the visual editor, and then there's the code editor. And most of you do not want to look at the code editor, most likely. And so if we're changing our meeting format, for example, we're changing the number of speakers. So we're going to make our meetings a little bit longer. We're going to have 4 speeches instead of 3. And so we'll dial up the total number of minutes allowed on the agenda or reserved on the agenda for speeches. And then if we change it from 3 speeches and 3, we also want 4 evaluations. So, I'm probably going through this a little bit too quickly, because one of the things that I'm not explaining here is there's this notion in WordPress of blocks of content. And so what we've done is define some custom blocks. And it will show the most recent ones, when you go to this screen, when you click the little plus button, if you don't see things related to the agenda, you can start typing the word agenda. And a role is either one of the standard roles, or it could be a custom role where we'll type in some name. So maybe we have a humorist in our club, but we call them the jokester. So that would be now added to our standard agenda. We can also add the other thing is an agenda note, which I think of as being sort of the stage directions. This can have time associated with it. So this is the 5-minute warm-up. And we can go through and make a number of these customizations. So there is documentation for this stuff. It needs to be improved and made more complete. That's one of the projects that I need to get back to. And I do have somebody on the line, Peggy Klauser, said she was going to try and help us with as an HPL project, working on better documentation for all this. So once I've updated this, I get a prompt, because I'm working in a template, to create either a single event based on this template or to create and update all my events based on the template. And I can see that one of these was modified independently. So maybe that one is a special meeting and I don't want to overwrite those changes, but all the rest of these, I'm going to go ahead and fill in, and we'll go ahead and project it out a few more months. And what this is doing then is updating all these events as a batch and then posting a bunch of new events that will all have that same template associated with them. So if we go out and view it, we can see we can now sign up for the jokester rule. Now, what Sunny was talking about is I think what she has done is created a new template and mocked it up to be what she wants it to be. And now she has all these other events that were created based on the old template. So what you can do is you can actually do copy, let's see. Yeah, this is how we would apply the new document to the old document. So we want to replace the weekly meeting template with the fancy meeting template. And that should work. So let's see. So this is fancy meeting. I should be able to access the create update screen and go through and you know what? I think I lied. I think it's not working. So I think we just went through this with Roger, actually, where he did the same thing. He improved the template.
David, may I jump in real quick?
Sure.
And I think, let me back up. You confirm with me if I'm correct. I think generally speaking with WordPress, if you are trying to create something new based on a previous version, it's different from how you would normally do a file in WordPress, in Microsoft Word, for example. right? So
Right.
you normally in Microsoft Word, you open up the file, you start manipulating, and you save it in a different name. Well,
Yeah.
no, the reverse order. You have to copy the file first. So now the new name is, copy up or whatever. Now you manipulate it. And so in here, you got the template. You copy it from the existing one if you want to start there, or you go from scratch. After you complete it and you save that template, what happens is right in this page that David has, right above fancy meeting, it will have an extra new line that shows that, hey, do you want to use this template to create a new event? Or would you like to apply this newly saved template into existing meeting? That's when you click and it will take you to the next page that says, I want it to be only next Wednesday's meeting and 2 weeks and that's it, or everything in the database that has already been in the system for the next 6 months, I want to apply to everything else. So when you update, that's where the additional line will pop up. Now, you can always go through what David has mentioned earlier.
Well, this is the manual way I would do it. It's a little bit uglier, but I could go through and copy. I would go into this code mode and copy from my fancy new and improved template and paste into the template that we've been using for our weekly meetings, and then go through that update routine. And so I'm sorry, I thought I had a better, more user-friendly way of doing that. And I'll probably get it working eventually, but it does not appear to be working at the moment. But that's partly the demo effect, where whenever I want to show
and for those of
that's when it screws up.
Those of you who doesn't like this block editor, this Gutenberg block editor, you can get a plugin that would take you back to the classic if that's what you want.
Well, yeah, except that it doesn't work. The Gutenberg, I'm sorry, for people who don't know the terminology, WordPress did this big overhaul of how the editor works. And so the agenda editor has really been designed around that. It really takes advantage of that. So yeah, you don't want to deactivate Gutenberg if you want to be able to use these tools. Let's say. I had one other thing that I thought I would show quickly. If I can find the right screen. So this is Club Awesome. This is sort of the original WordPress for Toastmasters site, my home club in Coral Springs, Florida. And the home page with a couple of videos incorporated, so a testimonial video. And actually, if you look at the top, you can see that there's a spike here. This is traffic. And this is probably a halo effect of the fact that I'm doing this event and talking a lot about Club Awesome. Is, we've got, well, 78 views. Again, it's not going to, I'm not competing with Yahoo just yet, but pretty good for a club. And if some of those people wind up coming through our door, that would be a good thing. This is what our Toastmasters site looked like when I became VPE back in the origins of time. This is before they did a software update, and I actually liked it less after they did the software update, which is one of the reasons that I switched to doing my own thing. This is an early version of the homepage. This is right after we moved to meeting at the ice skating rink. And so I got our Toastmaster in the lectern, our club president behind the lectern with the Zamboni going by in the background to dramatize the fact that we were meeting at a cool new location. And by the way, I'm playing around with something called the Wayback Machine, where you can see what websites used to look like. Here it is a little bit later. We're trying to make sure everybody knows that we've moved to a new location. Here's one trying to emphasize the fact that we swept the awards at a particular contest. So we're bragging. And this is one of my favorite versions because, and this is just, if you take a series of pictures and upload them into Google Photos, they'll automatically create an animation for you. So this is just an animated GIF file as the home page of our site. Here it is a little bit later. This is after John Quick, a friend of mine, became VPE, and he rearranged the site a little bit. He wanted to get more of the basic details in an organized way up top, but we were still using that promo. And again, here it is today. So, and this is what remains of our Fritos Toast site. I'm not sure whether they have an official way that you're supposed to shut these things down, but just in case anybody finds their way over there, we just have something saying that's the old website, and if you want current information, you better come to the new website. So that's how I got through the process of moving from one to the other. So let's see. All right. Questions, input?
Yes, questions. David, just helping you out here. Trisha has a question about how to manage members. If they've left the club, can we get rid of them? Or if they're saying, hey, I'm going to be taking a class, I'm going to be traveling around the world for 3 months. Can you just freeze everything for 3 months so I don't get the email? But when I come back, I'll let you know. Unfreeze me.
Okay. And thank you for keeping track, Roger, because she did say that she wanted me to cover that earlier, and then I didn't. So let's go to the demo site. And look at all these this demo member here. If you hover your mouse over their name, you should see remove as one of the options. And so I'm going to remove this person and say confirm removal. If they had created blogs or something, it would ask if we wanted to assign them to somebody else, so that somebody else would have the editing rights to them.
Do you have status like member, prospect, friend of the club, so that rather than removing them completely, they don't get emailed when you send out agenda to members? Sure. But if you were having a special event, you might want to email all friends of the club.
So there's a guests and former members screen that keeps track of people who used to be members of the club. So that's one way that can be handled. So that you still have a list of them, and you can go back to them. And you can also reactivate these people as active members. So it's dealt with, again, it may not be dealt with the same way it's dealt with on some other site that you've used, but there is something in there. Also, for the online club, we have a thing where we try and get people to RSVP. And if you've RSVP'd, we have that as a record, and we can go in. And so this, saves a little bit of retyping and some potential for error as well, that we can go in here, just check these people off, and create accounts for them.
David, let me see if this might help. If you go back to the all user page, and that this is a comment or question where if you scroll down a little bit, let's see, not allow, inactive. Okay, a subscriber. Now, can a club decide that they are going to add those role levels? Right now, you have manager, subscriber, author. if they can create their own role level where they can say, hey, this one's going to be prospect or friends of, then you can always move people between those roles. So clubs can define their own role if they choose to inside here.
Well, see, first of all, if I wanted to, if I can go in, if I have rights to edit the member records, I can go in and I can change this person from subscriber to author. So subscriber I'm using as, you know, it goes back to, again, this is a blogging system originally. So subscriber was somebody who subscribed to your blog and could comment on your blog. We're using that as the default member role. But you can make somebody an author, or if you're an administrator, you can make them an administrator. You can make them a manager. There is a user roles plugin that clubs should be able to activate that allows you to create custom roles or to change some of the permissions associated with, even with the built-in roles for your specific site. So that is possible.
So that some clubs, if they choose and say, you know what, we don't like that default nomenclature and we want to change it all, they have the ability to do that.
Right, and I just wanted to verify something here. So I'm switching. I'm now acting as Abraham Lincoln, who is a manager level user, which means that he can go in and edit the list here, and he should have that remove option available. So if you're at least either an administrator or a manager on the site, Trisha, you should be able to remove the person, and that will deactivate their user account for your site. They potentially could be a member of another site, so they'd still be able to use that same password, but they'd be removed from your site, and they should not get the emails at that point. So we can confirm the removal. Okay, and I'll switch back to being me. And actually, just to make that a little bit clearer, let's see, Amy Pond is a subscriber. And so if I go into her account, I have a much more limited menu of options. I don't know what Jetpack is doing there. That's like a utility. But basically, she can go in and she can update her own record. So maybe her phone number has changed or something, and or she just doesn't want it listed. So you can change that. Members also have the option of putting in some biographical information for a members page, if you have a members page on your site. And they can check whether how much of their information, if any, should be visible to the whole world, or whether it should only be visible to other club members. So I can say I'd like my basic information to be available, and if I want to have my email shown publicly, I would check there. There is also an option to hide this person from the member listings. So if you have somebody who's really shy, or I often use it for like test accounts, where I'll take them off. But if we did that, see, this is Amy Pond. If I save this, and I go to that site, in a mode where I'm not logged in, and I view the members page, should see that Amy is listed, just her basic details because she hasn't put in a lot else. And I guess I would encourage your members to let their names be out there at least, so that you know, their friends see that there are a lot of great people in the club, including somebody that they know and might be more inclined to join. but it's an option. And one other thing that I wanted to show quickly, if I can. Gotta stop being.
As David is navigating to wherever he's taking us to, if you have some dying question before you have to leave, please put it into the chat box real quick or raise your hands. Then that way we'll catch you before you have to take off. I know we're bumping up against the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to take off now, but I'm happy to follow up another time.
Okay.
I'm sure, Laurie, I'm sure that you can email to David, and I
right.
left my email in the chat box. If I could be of any assistance, just let me know.
All right, and I'm sorry, I did let the time get away from me. So if I've kept you guys longer than you intended, I apologize for that. I did want to show just briefly, as I kind of focused on setting up these agendas, how you would create a basic blog post. You just go in, you add the title, and you start typing. And then if you want to add an image, again, it's these little plus signs you'll see popping up different places. You can do add image and pick something from your computer. You can also do drag and drop. So let me just show that. So, but I left something open so that I could do that. Oh, all right. So here's a picture of my daughter. I drag it in here, put it where I want it, and that gets inserted here. If you want to include a YouTube video, where did I put my YouTube video? Oh, all the way over here. So here's a little testimonial video we have for this year. And I can just, what I did, I just copied the web address for the specific video. When I paste in here, it automatically adds the player. And so this is how you can add quite a bit of multimedia content. You can also paste in things like a Twitter post. You get the link for the specific post. It will embed that content as well. So there's a lot you can do there. And then I mostly have dealt with events in the context of meetings, but you can also advertise an open house or something. So if I go to new RSVP event, we can just put in the date, or we can use a little calendar widget to pick the date. Set the time, do we want to collect RSVPs, a few other basic options. And we get this view where over on the right-hand side, there is a widget where you can change the date, change the time. You have some basic options here, but it's the same basic editor for creating your content, for promoting your event. And then if you wanted to charge for the event, you could set pricing. There are all sorts of other options that you can set on this screen. You can customize the form that people use when they register. You can customize the confirmation message, which by default is just thank you. You can make it something more elaborate, like thank you for registering, and here's the online meeting link. So when I don't know how many of you registered on the WordPress for Toastmasters website, but that was an RSVP Maker. registration process. So I think that's probably enough to cover for today. And you know where to find me if you have follow-up questions. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for joining me in this. All right. Bye-bye.